Or good evening, I should say, to Shanghai. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Kathryn. Yeah, a pleasure. Yeah, 9:30 here p.m.
Yeah. And for me, I'm really happy that we were able to make this work today because this is my first uh, international expansion explained LinkedIn Live. And so it's somehow fitting that the host of an international business podcast such as yourself should be my guest today.
And I'm honored to be the first one.
Yeah. The first, but not the last, I hope. So this is for sure.
Definitely. Definitely. All the others will be better.
Oh, I wouldn't say that, but there will be others for sure. And maybe I would just say from your LinkedIn profile, then maybe people know that you describe yourself to be Roman at birth, a Londoner from graduation, and since 2018, you've been living in Shanghai. You're a sales professional. You're working in the art, fashion, and let's say education industry, but you're also the host of the International Business Podcast, which actually everybody should know if they're looking to be active in international business. But maybe you can introduce yourself just a little bit better than I can.
I'll try. I'll give it a shot. I'll make it short as well. So, yes, as the name suggests, I guess, I'm Italian, but I've been living outside of Italy for 11, 12 years, more or less now. And I will say my career spans across Italy, Rome, the UK, London, and in the last 4 years, Shanghai, China. I covered several positions in several industries. I work in food packaging, so manufacturing. I work in the gambling industry. I worked the longest in education. Um, yes, Kathryn, all good connection.
Yes, all good. Yeah, all good. At least I assume we're all
Okay,
good.
perfect. Sorry, I just heard that echo. And what is the connection? Because I said basically I never dealt only with the people that were in the same country where I was living. I always dealt with a plurality of, I would say, nationalities. Most of my time I work with, let's say, Europeans and North Americans and Australians. So that's generalizing a little bit like the Western world. And lately, way more with the Asia Pacific region. So there has been a shift, I would say, in the flow. And another connection among all these roles that occurred, as you mentioned before, Kathryn, is the sales function. So at the heart, I would say I'm a B2B, mostly sales professional. Thank you, Kathryn.
And that's quite interesting because I think that a lot of people, when you say that you're in international sales, they kind of have this impression that you, instead of walking from door to door in Rome, let's say, to sell something to somebody, that you more or less do the same thing in Shanghai. And they don't realize that this international sales role, especially in the B2B area, that actually you're also taking on board a lot of people management, a lot of marketing skills, and so on, and that the role actually has a much greater scope than were you to be purely domestically based, let's say. So, was this something that you looked actively searched to go into, or did you land in it more by coincidence?
Yes, correct. Yeah, I would say sales is a simple. That's correct. I mean,
I've lost you a
as I
little
was
bit.
saying, sales, many things. It's like saying I'm a market, and of course, uh, hear me now, Kathryn?
I can
My
hear you now
connection.
again, yes.
Okay. Maybe I'm a little bit lagged. Apologies.
No problem. I can wait.
No, I'm fine now. I was saying so that yes, when you manage a an area and also an area that is what like Asia Pacific, it's not just sales, but there would go from marketing, budgeting to sales to even admin, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. And it's one of those roles I always feel that on the one hand, people underestimate the actual scope of what it involves, especially if they've worked maybe in domestic sales. They think they just need to be able to speak English and they can transfer to international. But I think they also don't realize that there are so many really specific things that you have to learn in order to be successful in international business. I don't know. How did you, let's say, learn the role that you have or learn these specifics, which are definitely important for the international field? Hi,
First of
Stefan.
all, correct. The I mean, being able to speak English is not enough. Even if I have to say that one of my very first international sales role, let's be honest, was kind of chosen because of my English skills. I'm not a native speaker, but at the time, perhaps there weren't. Let's say the competition wasn't that high, so they chose me. But this is a job that I don't think it's for you. Ups and downs. But to summarize, I think the most skills to have in international sales is the to question everything and to adapt, because Italians are not all the same, okay? French are not all the same, and Chinese are not all the same. But when then you start selling on a daily basis to 10, 15, 20, 30 countries, you do need to adapt even more than actually selling to just one nationality. Again, I don't want to generalize. It's not one country has the same approach and same spirit and everything. But when you deal with a plurality of them, you do need to adapt even more, I would say, quickly than dealing nationally, whatever the country. So I would say adaptability, number one, and resiliency, if I can say that. You just need to keep going and learn. I made so many mistakes.
Yes.
Let's put it like that. But I enjoy the ride. I do enjoy the ride.
That's the most important thing. And I think that, to be honest, if people realize that you're doing your best, then they will forgive you they'll forgive you some mistakes along the way, because they usually appreciate that they couldn't do any better if they were coming to your culture in the opposite direction. So.
And if I may say something, Kathryn, if I could add, it's maybe sounds a bit of a cliche, but saying you're sorry when you make a mistake is super powerful. Most people don't say they're sorry. They make a mistake, they will cover it up. You make a mistake, you just say you're sorry. It gets everything easier. I don't think it's all in sales, but the more I work, the more I find people that do not apologize. So when I do make a mistake, nobody likes to apologize, let's be honest, but I think it's just easier. You just need to do it. accept the fact that you made a mistake. Don't make it again, of course, but it makes things easier. And when you work international, you will make more mistakes than usual.
That's very true. And also, you make the kind of mistakes that make you feel like you've made yourself look really stupid or something like that, because you often don't realize you've made that mistake until you see people's shocked, amused, or horrified faces because you've just put both feet somewhere wrong. It's like,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But those make for the amusing memories, I think. And I mean, I know for me, the most, let's say, the biggest changes that I had were back at a time when I was very first traveling a lot to China, and I had, on the other hand, I was also responsible for the Serbian markets, and so I would be going from Belgrade, where, let's say, it sometimes would get quite loud and people would be banging on the tables, but we, at the end of the day, we were all cool with one another, we were friends. But then you would go to China, and everything would be, you know very calm, very quiet, and everybody was taking care not to lose face and smiling and not saying anything aggressive or very direct to the other person. So this was really quite a contrast, for sure. And I'm guessing for you too, it must have been a
So
big
if I can say something,
change. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
say 70% of my 60-70% of my professional career, I dealt mainly with Europeans, North Americans. So I think a kind of a direct approach. That then when I brought this onto the Asian world overall, I had issues at the beginning because I was too direct. And being too
Yeah.
direct, you're perceived as rude and you're gonna have problems. So I had to adjust, and it took me a while. It's not easy, but to the point.
And what were the things? I mean, was this just in discussions, or how did the colleagues make you realize that this was maybe offensive, or that you were not dealing with them in some kind of correct way? Or were they just very polite
That's
and you learned afterwards?
many ways. An example was that I had colleagues from a previous company. They just didn't do what I was, let's say, asking them to do, just on purpose,
Oh,
but because I was too direct asking this. But at the beginning, of course, I was frustrated. But then, it was me that I guess I had to understand it, because it's me going into a new culture, different culture, and I didn't know how things, let's say, should have happened or should have managed. So once I started changing and adapting, then everything just went easier. But nobody tells you. So it's something you kind of need to figure out by yourself.
yeah. And I'm guessing from what you're saying that you didn't actually have any kind of help, let's say professional help, to adjust to life in China versus life in London or Rome.
Pure experience. When I moved to China and I started working for another employer, not mine now, I was the only foreigner out of 300 employees. So 299 Chinese and then Leo. So I think it was actually a great way to learn, because it was, either learn to swim or just drown. They didn't tell me what to do, because it was kind of up to me to understand how to make things work, because that was the normal, that was the standard. It was me who was different. That's very Italian, sorry, apologies. But the I think it was a great I think it was a great way to learn, because really it was up to me. So great, direct, straightforward experience.
Hi, Emir. Yeah, I mean, I think that being thrown in, let's say, at the deep end, and you either sink or you swim, this it has its benefits. I mean, it's really hard school, but there are worse ways to get started, I think. If you are this kind of person who's happy to adapt and who enjoys this kind of challenge.
I think probably because I'm a salesperson,
Hmm.
you know, ups and downs. It's always basically yes.
Okay. So what were the main differences? Were you managing a sales team when you came to China? Did you have to actually manage a team, or was it just that you had to work with colleagues who also needed to deliver things to you, or to get things to work so that you could progress with your topics?
I would say both. But most of, say, work was done with distributors.
Okay.
But definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And it was it was hard. It was kind of hard to mention at the beginning to manage a team here, become culture and not having received, let's say, coaching on how to deal with different vendors, where you can be more like, okay, most straightforward approach. So mornings here. So once, let's say, the business in Europe started, then you had to kind of adapt and change, because then I had to with the Dutch, with the Germans, with the Austrians, with the British. And it to be different, and the Italians as well.
And I mean, this basic question of learning how to manage distributors is always one of the topics that's more complex in international sales. But especially when you go to such a completely different culture like in China, then it becomes even more of a learning curve, let's say.
Absolutely. But to make it even more complicated, Kathryn, what happened then to me in the last couple of years is I'm always in China, but now I have an Italian employer, and I look for distributors in Asia. So I did exactly a kind of swap or shift compared to before. And it's the first time I have an Italian employer. So, when you deal with your employer, you're doing it in a certain way. But now on a daily basis, I speak with Vietnamese, Japanese, Indonesians, Thai, and they're just, on average, completely different compared to dealing with distributors from the Netherlands, Austria, Britain, so on and so forth. But it's up to me to adapt. It's up to me to adapt.
For sure. And I mean, I think that this is the biggest, let's say it's one of the biggest signs of, or one of the biggest differences between a sales manager who has a long-term career in international sales, a successful long-term career in international sales, and one who works in international sales for a couple of years but doesn't really, let's say, doesn't really succeed in the role because they're not able to adapt to more than one region or to more than one set of distribution partners, because that can be really tough.
As you said,
if you've worked with one,
being able to speak, speaking English, and then travel a bit to go to exhibitions, exchange business cards, present your products. It sounds cool, but actually it's easy. It's but doing it long term is a little bit more complicated. Yes.
Yeah, I think that sums it up quite well. It always sounds really cool. And I used to, in the past, I also would have people who would say to me, but you're always away and you go to all these cool places. I'm like, airports, hotel rooms, supermarkets, and hospitals. That was what I used to see. And exhibition centers, of course. I mean, but it's not
Lovely
as...
exhibition centers.
Yeah, they're the best worldwide.
Do you miss them now? Do you
Yes.
miss them now that we have to be
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Now I don't see them. Now I miss them. I even miss Shanghai Exhibition Center, and I really didn't like that. I really don't like the one in Shanghai, but if you offered me the chance now and said I could come without quarantine, as long as I only go to the exhibition center in Shanghai, then I'm on the next plane. This is...
I remember Kathryn 3 years ago, more or less, when I was still in medical devices. And here in Shanghai, there is probably the biggest or the second biggest medical exhibition in the world at the Shanghai Convention Center. It took us
Mm-hmm.
about 2, 3 hours just to get out on the last day because there were like
Yep.
200,000 people. I don't miss that, to be honest. I don't mind Zoom a little bit now.
Yeah, I don't miss that part of it, but I miss this. I miss this buzz that you get when you're actually together with all of these different people, and the idea that you go around the Shanghai Convention Center and that I would actually bump into people that I knew, Chinese people that I knew in the convention center. That was always somehow quite special when somebody would shout, "Kathryn," across this crowded space. So, yeah, that's.
Yes.
I think Amir is thinking that he doesn't want to go and spend 3 hours to get out of a convention center. Yeah. James is asking us how the shift online has changed things. How has it changed things for you, Leo?
Hi, James. I can say this, that number one, because of the pandemic and then the shift to the online world, I started a podcast that started as a little hobby and now it's a little plus hobby. And I probably would have not started if it weren't for the pandemic, because I used to travel like Kathryn, 2 or 3 times a month, and then I got stuck in one place. I thought, how can I keep connecting with international professionals all over the world in episodes, and I'm having a lot of fun. But number two, in my role right now that I changed job during the pandemic, I have never left China. I've been traveling all over Europe and all over Asia Pacific on Zoom, Teams, Meet, Skype. Who uses Skype now? And Zoom, if I didn't say that. It's possible. It's business goes at the end of the day. When tough is the new reality, it's like we said at the beginning, you either learn to swim or you sink. I like drown, actually. It feels more violent than sink.
Definitely. No, I mean, I think I would say the same thing, that it is possible, but it's harder because it's harder to build those relationships when you are not sitting in the same room as people, and you don't spend as much time together with them as you would do if you then went to have lunch, or you went to, I don't know, you went to KTV with them to do karaoke. Then you would have a wholly different kind of basis for the relationship than if all you've done is spend an hour on a Zoom or 2 hours on a Zoom. Zach is telling us that trade shows are like his high school reunion. Yeah, same for me. I don't see quite so many people because I've never always gone to the same trade shows, but I love meeting people at trade shows. You still there, Leo?
My connection sucks a little bit, but I'm here. Is it okay?
You're here. Yeah, it's fine now.
Okay. Yes. And no, I agree with Zach. I mean, trade shows, I think we will do way less in the future, but it will be better quality.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that they will have to find a way, as technology improves, that they will have to find a way to improve the hybrid possibilities that we have of trade shows. Because, I think that for the future, this will be necessary. If the trade shows themselves want to survive, then they have to find new solutions and move forward with technology. But maybe just as a kind of, because we think we're coming a little bit to the end from a time perspective, What would be your advice, Leo, for those people who are starting out in international sales? Are there some lessons that you've learned along the way where you would say, if you were starting out again, you would definitely try and do certain things differently, or you would look for certain kinds of support? What would you recommend on that?
So from my personal experience, perhaps the most important things to start for me were mentors. So first, I had my father. My father's been working in international business all his life. So when I was a kid, I used to see my father, going to China, going to Germany, going to whatever, and then coming back and always having stories to tell. And my father kind of helped me at the beginning. Another one, always mentors. Then I had a mentor from the UK and then a mentor from the States. Just happened to be. So number one would be, if you're lucky enough, have mentors. So people with more experience than you that don't just teach but coach, and through their stories you can learn. So for me, I met 2-3 people in my life that were really amazing. So they kind of showed me the way, and definitely this helped me. What I will do differently? Well, probably, good one, Leo, people need mentors, absolutely. But you need to be lucky. It's not just finding someone who has more experience than you, Amir. I was lucky, definitely lucky. But you need 1 person, 2 people maybe in your life. But if you do, stick with them. Number 2 would be, well, in my case, it would be learn Chinese earlier. I'm studying Chinese. I've been studying Chinese for a few years. I'm still not good. But I had this idea 15 years ago to start learning Chinese. I just did a little bit. But that little Chinese that I learned then provided opportunities. So, but if I could go back, Kathryn, I will definitely start learning this earlier.
Me too. Yeah, me too. That would be for sure. It would be good to be able to actually communicate properly in Chinese. Yeah, good advice, I think. Definitely good advice. Yeah, and if you don't learn, then eat Chinese. Yeah, I think we've done enough of that, eating Chinese. And I finished my oolong. This was the last of my Chinese oolong today, so I saved it for a special occasion. Yeah, Leo, thank you for taking the time this evening. I know it's quite late for you, and it's been fun to talk. But before we finish up, I get to ask you that question today. If you could tell us one memorable experience from all of your international travels, it could be something funny, it could be a disaster. What would it be? You must have thought about this one before.
I didn't. I
Really?
wasn't expecting this question. Yeah. You got me there. Well, which story could it be? Well, probably my first international sales role. So one Sunday, I was still I was maybe first year, second year university student. And on a weekend, I used to go to the tennis club to play with my friends. And I got approached by a guy that I knew was in the club, but I didn't know him. Just played a little bit, and then basically, long story short, after an hour playing, he found out I could speak English. We liked each other. I was studying business at university. Invited me next week because they were looking at an international sales professional, and fast forward basically 1 month and a half, the 2 of us were in Chicago for an amazing trip, an amazing exhibition. And I was presenting a fantastic product I didn't understand, of course, at all. And it was amazing. It was basically saying yes once to an half an hour tennis match with someone I didn't know. Chit-chatting, maybe chit-chatting is the wrong way, but you need to be able to communicate and talk to people. Even if you don't know someone, you need to be able to have a conversation. The best way, in my opinion, is being able to ask questions. And I think thanks to my mom, this one more than my father, I think I kind of got it since I was a kid. Chance came out of nowhere. I was probably the right person at the right time, a bit of luck. If you're not lucky, nothing's going to happen in life, probably. And yeah, 40 days later, we were in Chicago.
Amazing.
And then basically, my last year of university, I never went to uni. I only attended set exams, if I can say that. And Monday to Friday was at the office, and I was dealing in the morning with Europeans, in the afternoon with the Americans. And it was just amazing, just using a computer. And that kind of blew up my mind. I didn't think about it, just happened. And that's, Rome, be lucky.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Stefano, if you're listening to this, Stefano, that's the person.
Okay. I think, people just have to, people often should just say yes to things and worry about how to do things later. And you can often work out a lot of things that way. You get some of your best opportunities.
Yeah. I didn't know anything. And then I learned just a little bit.
Yeah. I would say a little bit more than a little bit, but yeah. It's always good to get that opportunity and to have something fantastic to go on. Yeah. That's a very cool story to finish up on today. Thank you.
Yeah. I was able to pick one. Good.
Yeah. It's not so easy to pick just one, I know. Yeah. Yes, everybody has to start somewhere. And this was also me starting somewhere today. So thank you guys for everybody who's been listening. I'm very grateful that some people turned up. Anybody who didn't see this and who would like to see a replay, if you can find it on LinkedIn, I know it's not always easy to find the replays on LinkedIn, but the recording will be there. It will also be on my YouTube channel, and I'll put a link to that in the comments after we've finished. Leo, thank you so much for being here today. And it's been a pleasure, as always, to talk to you.
Kathryn, my pleasure, and sorry for lagging.
No problem.